So my name's Bobby Taylor. I work with the Ashokan Watershed Stream Management Program and the Ulster County Soil and Water Conservation District. I run a program at the Stream Management Program called the Catskill Stream Buffer Initiative, which is a landowner program where landowners that live in the watershed can apply to get assistance for restoring the streamside native vegetation along their property. Many times in the Catskills we find that streams are often impaired because people tend to want to mow the vegetation right down to the stream's edge, and so removing that root structure that is really responsible for holding all the soils together and increasing the roughness on the floodplain to slow that floodplain flow. So one of the programs that we offer, the CSBI program, landowners can apply to have the Soil and Water Conservation District come to their property and make recommendations for improving the streamside vegetation. They can then apply, after they get those recommendations, they can apply to actually have us come out and build, install that vegetation to get them back on the right track for making sure that their streamside property is being cared for in a sustainable manner and will be strong and resilient to flooding. Right now we're in one of our plant material centers here that we have in the watershed. We're on Colebrook Road in Woodstock. Here we're keeping native willows and dogwoods. So in 2010 we started growing this material. These guys are silky willow. We installed these just as live cuttings. So we took a piece of a stake, a piece of a plant, we cut it into a stake, and then we installed that into the ground, and it itself puts out roots. Willows are great in that they have been able to evolve over the years to be able to not only germinate from seed, but if a piece of this willow material gets ripped out in a flood and transported downstream, buried in a gravel bar, it will put out its own roots and start a new willow. So we took advantage of that characteristic of the willow, installed these as stakes 2009. We put 10,000 of them here. There's another material center down in New Paltz, which is on a floodplain in the Wallkill. Really good growing conditions. We have another 2,000 of them growing down there. So these things will continue to grow. What we do when it's time to do a restoration is we come out and we just simply take cuttings off of these plants. So we'll never take these full plants out. They're just used as cutting material for us to establish this same sort of vegetation along people's property. Variety of things we can do with this material. One, we can just do live stakes where we would take a piece of the stem and make a cut here, and that goes into the ground. We can also take and bundle a whole bunch of cuttings together and lay them in a linear fashion along the brook as a bundle that we then wooden stake into the ground, and that will grow a linear row of willows. So we can really establish that really dense vegetation along the streams that are important to hold stuff together. Here at the Colebrook Willow Fields, we have 5 different species of native shrub willows, and we have 2 species of native dogwood. All these plants will grow from cuttings. Some of it was harvested locally, so we went out into the watershed on people's property that had a really good source of native willows. They gave us permission to harvest that material. And so this first row here is all the native collected from the Catskills, collected from the Ashokan watershed. Some over in the town of Olive, and then some up in Birch Creek, up in Pine Hill. These native and local genotypes, so these guys have been growing in the Catskills here for tens of thousands of years. And so when we stuck them in the ground here, they grew really well. They took off and have grown the best out of all the material we put in here. So as we move down the rows, there's about 10 rows here of material. This first row is the native stuff that we selectively harvested, and then as we move down, we had because we needed so much, we ended up having to buy it from a local, not a local, but a native plant provider. We got it from Ernst Seed, which is in Pennsylvania, and they sent us up nice moist wooden live stakes that we then worked with a contractor and volunteers. There were a lot of volunteers out here helping to pound these things into the ground. So combination of locally harvested material and some stuff that we had to purchase to get the quantity that we needed. But it is all native species. that's one of the core components to CSBI, is that the Streamside Buffer Program, we only use native plants. Native plants are adapted to the local ecology here, they're adapted to the climate, and that's what belongs on the stream banks. The best thing for landowners is that they're maintenance free. They essentially don't need much care. Once they're established, the first year they need a little watering, but once they're established, they're really prone to growing really well here. And so that's why we strive to always use native plants in all of our projects.